But Ringo, fantastic drummer, and he came in for a lot of stick. I mean, there was a period when, in the 70s, I think, probably, when people like Buddy Rich were saying Ringo couldn't play, and everyone was sort of thinking it was very simple, but it just wasn't. If you listen to the drum fills on Strawberry Fields Forever, or A Day in the Life, or Rain is another example. I mean, it's just staggering what he did, and he didn't ever do anything that you would normally do. It's not the kind of thing that a drummer naturally sits down to play like that. And he would just play these very complicated, tricky fills naturally. And so I've got a lot of respect for him as a drummer. And I think Harrison was a great guitar player as well. But, his 12-string things, Rickenbacker, like A Hard Day's Night. It's classic. It sort of defines an era. That opening chord and the guitar solo. Yeah, I mean, he was playing drums, in regular bands. It's not as if, they found him. I mean, he was a drummer, and that's something I've read lots of interviews. Obviously, I gravitate towards interviews with them to read, find out different stuff about it. And he said he always just wanted to play. I mean, he was a drummer. And he got very offended when people started calling his drum fills, silly little drum fills, because, he felt he was pretty good. I mean, he never wanted to solo, apart from that one which he was persuaded to do on Abbey Road, but he does things that are very unconventional, and those are the people like Keith Moon is another one, unconventional, and also a lot of personality. So when you hear him play, you kind of know it's him, and you taught that, no. And who knows why he, it's all. I mean, just from a slightly technical point of view, they're called drags, but it's let me take you down. It's just so out there. It's not the kind of thing that a normal drummer would play. Being a normal drummer, I can vouch for that.
Phil Collins was an extra in the Beatles' A Hard Day's Night movie. Raul on October 16, 2009 in George Harrison, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, The Beatles. On March 31, 1964, the Beatles performed / lip-synced in front of a live studio audience of 350 screaming fans at the Scala Theatre in the London Borough of Camden. The scene John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison and Ringo Starr were filming was for the closing segment of their film debut A Hard Day's Night. The Beatles' A Hard Day's Night concert, Scala Theatre, March 31, 1964. Phil Collins. The fans that were there that night were each paid a standard union fee for their appearance, and among them was Phil Collins, then a 13-year-old child actor who years later found fame with the band Genesis and as a solo artist. Scala Theatre, The Beatles' A Hard Day's Night, Phil Collins, 1964. The Beatles' A Hard Day's Night, Phil Collins extra. Here is a screen cap of little Philip Collins in the crowd. Phil Collins extra, A Hard Day's Night movie, 1964. Collins can barely be seen in the film, but he was later asked to add commentary to the DVD release You Can Do That, The Making of A Hard Day's Night. Here's what Collins had to say about being there in the middle of Beatlemania. Collins would later pay tribute to his childhood heroes the Beatles on the album covers of Genesis X and Land of Confusion. Click below to check it out. Steve Catanzaro. His story was mistold by Casey Kasem in 1987 as the talk-up to Genesis' song, In Too Deep, during an American Top 40 countdown. He describes Collins as being in the mob chasing the lads down the street in the film's opening titles. Casey didn't mention the later scene in the theater.
Alfarolina.